I don't usually get to do quite that much of a mic drop, but that was a mic drop there. Great, hello everybody. So when I was writing this talk, there was only one title that it could have, right? Which is Big Ideas Only, because if you know anything about Eads and James Buchanan Eads, it is nothing but big ideas. Like, this man does such incredible things, one after another, and there's always one on the horizon, and there's always, something coming. And so that's what this talk is gonna cover. It's just gonna leap through his life and hop through some of those bigger projects, not just the bridge. The bridge will have a good bit of content in the end, and then when we're done, I know Mark and I will talk more with you, and we can do a Q&A and answer more of the bigger connections. This is very exciting to talk to you guys, because before I was a big James Eads fangirl, I was also a Grant fangirl. So this is kind of full circle here for me. So before Eads died, some closing words for him, and some of his dying words that are attributed to him in the mid-20th century book Road to the Sea by Florence Dorsey is, "I cannot die, I have not finished my work." So we're going to jump off there. So this is 1830s United States. This is the world where he's born in 1820. He was the third child of his parents. He's born in Indiana. His father is pretty educated, but kind of a drifter and moving around different places for business opportunities. So the family moves a lot when he's a kid, including Cincinnati and Louisville. And it's Louisville that they move from when James is 13. They come to St. Louis. They head this way. His dad hangs back in Louisville. His mom has him and his sisters on the steamboat alone. They come across the Ohio from Louisville, hang a ride at Cairo, and come up to St. Louis. And so that trip is pretty interesting to think about. And there's a lot of, it would take them several days, and we have quotes from people later talking about what kind of kid he was on that boat ride. And it really, I think we probably all know a kid like him, as I describe him in a moment. Someone described him aboard the boat as having a gentle manner, but his energy was appalling. He constantly followed the pilot around. He's asking about the mechanics of the engine. He's obsessed with showing the pilot this tiny little steam engine that he himself has designed, and he's like making models, and he's really, really into it. He's 13, right, at the time. So this is, there are kids like this. Give them the opportunities, right? Do the things. And so this is an image from the Missouri, from our collections of the steamboat a steamboat turning north at Cairo, and it was painted around the same time that James Eads and his family would have been heading north. This is where the Mississippi and the Ohio come together. And someday when I make my movie about Eads, or the one that plays in my head, the music's really going to swell right here, right? Because this is a big moment. This is a really big moment when he sees the river that's going to define the rest of his life, right? Think about whatever has defined the rest of, what if you could know what that moment was, what that place was? And we know it was right there. And by define, I mean, he's going to walk the bottom of this river over 500 times. He's going to build a navy for this river. He's going to span it with steel, which hadn't been, wasn't even a thing yet. He's going to attempt to control it, and he's definitely going to die for it, right? Because all of that is going to take a toll on his body. So his fate would have it, because it's a great, his story, his life story is full of these big moments that kick off other big things. The night before the Eads family is supposed to get off the steamboat and start their new life in St. Louis, they're so close they can see the lights. The steamboat captain docks them for the night, and the boat catches fire and sinks. So there were 8 people that lost their lives that night, none of James's families, but they did lose everything. So they start that life the next day in St. Louis with nothing. They make this huge journey, they're so close, and that's that. And this is, this traveling by steamboat was incredibly dangerous, and this was not an uncommon thing to happen. So once they find they're in St. Louis, his mother has to get straight to work, networking, finding people that can help them, getting a place to stay, finding clothes, finding food, all of these things. And I want to give her credit for that, right? Because that's a big, and she's going to come into play later, Eads' mom, in this story. So she gets them settled. He's, as a 13-year-old, he does not go to school. He is, he's not in school at this time. He gets to work supporting his family, selling apples on the riverfront. So he's on the riverfront. The boats are coming and going. He's selling apples and watching this whole scene play out on the riverfront. This is St. Louis when James Buchanan Eads arrives. This is the street grid. This is the, Shoto's Pond is out there. This is how big we were as a city. This is the decade we become a city. This is when we are booming. And there are so many people here moving about that were they're making big history. And so, and it's just interesting to think of James Buchanan Eads as a teenager on the riverfront, and meanwhile, William Greenleaf Eliot is preaching somewhere, or James Meacham is helping some enslaved children go to school. Like, there's just these big moments happening in the 1830s in St. Louis, and he's here for it. Here's some more images of 1830s St. Louis. The image on the left is 4th Street looking south. So you have the courthouse in the far distance before it got its bigger dome. And in a church there along where there are office buildings and banks. And then the cathedral, which is one of the first images that we have of the cathedral and what it originally looked like. So we set the scene, 1830s St. Louis. He's selling apples, but then he gets a job. Someone offers James a job, and this is the firm of Williams & During. It's a dry goods store along 1st Street. And the man, one of the owners, has met him, has caught on that this is a really smart kid, and it's not just a job in the store, it is also access to the engineering library upstairs. So when he's not at work, he's reading, and he has full access to all of these books. It's kind of a perfect setup there. So he's on the riverfront, he's working there in this store, and he's watching the river, watching the boats coming and going. Things are being loaded and unloaded, things are falling off, things are going to the bottom, ships are going down. He knows all about this. But he gets a chance finally to work on a steamboat. And so he's working on the Knickerbocker, which is a great name, the Knickerbocker. In 1839, 6 years after he had arrived here, so he's 19 years old, the Knickerbocker sinks. And everyone on board this time is fine, but everything on board is lost. And so James's mind sees, this loss of freight, and it gets to work. And he starts thinking, if I can figure out a way to go get that stuff, right? To go get that stuff from the bottom of the river, then I'm on to something, right? So salvage. And so in 1842, he starts designing something that can help him do this. His first solution is going to require 2 things. One, a diving bell that allows someone to get to the bottom of the river, and then a boat with a pulley that can help bring this stuff back up. So I'm going to hop forward one slide while we talk about this diving bell. Let's go keep that big ideas only in our head. So he didn't invent a diving bell, but he definitely made it his own, and he made it something that worked for him. It is it's a vessel with an open bottom that is lowered to the bottom of a river, not as deep as the Mississippi usually, with some kind of cable connected to the boat above and a tiny air hose. So Eads was initially using a tar-covered whiskey barrel as his diving bell, with lead weights attached around the side to get him to the bottom. Yesterday I was leading riverboat cruises as the narrator, and the river's up high right now, right? It was really fun to be going underneath the bridge and talking about the diving bells while everybody's watching the water swirl around us. It's like, imagine going down there. So when he gets to the bottom, he can't see anything. He only has his feet to drag along in the mud, which is moving as well, and the current is swirling around. He has a pole of some sort to poke through the sand and mud to find whatever the thing is he's going to bring back up, whether it's a boat or a box or a crate or whatever it is he's looking for. So a hard pass for me on this. But he has to do his own diving. No one says, yeah, that sounds some fun. And so he has to do this work himself at first. The second part of the idea is the boat. And so he walks into a shipbuilder's office in 1842, the Nelson brothers, with the plans for a salvage boat, and he says, hey, this is this plan I have, it's all drawn out. If you will build it for free, I'll let you have a stake in the company. They say yes, and they are partners on out. Like, they stay partners for a long time, and if you go to Bellefontaine, to the Eads, where the Eads tomb is, it's actually an underground mausoleum, but if you go to where the tomb is, right across the street is the Nelson brothers. They're buried just a few little steps away from them. So this is a drawing of one of his later designs of his submarine. So not a submarine, but a submarine boat, and it has all this, this system of pulleys and things that can bring things up. So very similar. He would eventually have a whole fleet of these boats. So he's on to something. So he builds these. They're successful. In 1856, big idea, he goes to Washington, D.C. to offer to clear the western rivers of snags. So snags are where the tree trunks go down in the mud, and a steamboat will catch onto it and sink. So he goes to D.C. and wants, looking for a contract to clear all the western rivers. They pass, or it passes the House, but it's defeated in the Senate. So he forms the Western River Improvement Company. In 1857, he has 10 boats in his fleet, working on all the different rivers to clear things. And so this starts him on a way to a massive fortune. And it also sets the stage for the bridge, although he doesn't know this yet, because he's a boat guy, he's a water guy, he's a north and south guy, right? Like, this is what's happening. He's not thinking of trains at this point. But he knows the bottom of the river, and that's what matters. But life is not just mud and boats. So in 1845, James meets Martha Dillon. Martha Dillon is the daughter of a wealthy St. Louis businessman. He asks for her hand. The dad says nope. He's not really interested in his daughter marrying someone who spends their days at the bottom of the Mississippi River. So here's James's mom, comes back into play here. She writes a series of letters to Martha encouraging her to defy her dad and marry James anyway. And she does. It was a romantic relationship, but Martha carries the burden of anyone that is married to someone who's married to their job, except the job he's married to is at the bottom of the Mississippi River and elsewhere, right? So they're very much in love. They start a small family, all of this, but all of her, her letters are very clear that she was struggling on her own, handling all of the burdens of being at home while he's gone for long stretches of time. His parents weren't living in St. Louis. She didn't have help with this, so she's taking on all of this himself. He realizes this is not sustainable for the marriage and the family, and he walks away from his salvage business. He opens a glass factory in 1845, which is thought to be the first glass factory west of the Mississippi River. And this wasn't really a big idea for him. It was kind of a medium idea. We won't put this in the big idea bucket. But the glass factory wasn't as successful as he felt it could be, so he walks away from that and goes back to the river in 1848. By that time, they have several small children, including a son named James. And then 1849 happens. Usually the story is just the burning of the city or the cholera. It's a pretty big year, right, in St. Louis history. But for our leading man and for Eads, it's a really, really big year, because when the fire happens and all of those boats go down, guess who's there to get them back up? Right? So he's there, his salvage company, all his boats are prepared to salvage everything that just went down in that fire. There were 22 steamboats that went down the night of the Great St. Louis Fire. And so he's here to bring them back up. It's a huge boom for him financially and professionally, but then it's also tempered, as all big dramatic stories are, tempered with huge personal loss. The fire is in May, and his son James dies in June. He's in the midst of building more salvage boats, working really hard. The company was up to 4. Martha's writing letters again saying, this is too much, I need you. His response was to send her to Vermont to rest, which is very normal at the time, should be normalized again, normalized Vermont for resting. But on her return trip in 1852, she contracts cholera and dies. So big highs and lows at this point in his life, and he's absolutely devastated. Cholera, yeah. He swears to give up the salvage business, walks away from it. He's going to come back to it. But walks away at that point, and 2 years later, he does remarry. This time is more of a marriage of practicality. So he marries Eunice Eads. She comes with the name. She was the widow of his cousin. The two of them head to Europe for a while for him to rest, and when he returned, he gets right back to buying boats. This time he is not buying salvage boats, but snag boats. He's doing more of that work on the snags, which are used ahead of steamboats to deter tree trunks. And they make good bases for salvage boats. But also something bigger is happening, unconnected to him technically at the time. The first trains are getting to the eastern edges in St. Louis. So while all that's happening, trains are showing up in St. Louis. In 1857, he decides to retire, and he's made an incredible fortune. He's only in his 40s, and he's got much bigger ideas on the horizon, but something's gonna step right up. All of that's put on hold when Civil War breaks out in 1861. He is invited to DC to consult on how the Union Army can patrol and protect the waterways. He's asked to design and help, one of the people asked to design and create these Ironside boats, takes on the challenge, comes back to St. Louis, purchases an existing shipyard as well, and then the ships are not just made in Carondelet, there are other shipyards that he uses as well. And they are made of, they're steel boats, metal hulled. He builds 7 boats in 100 days. They head out, they're at the Fort Henry, Fort Donaldson battles, and at Vicksburg as well. Eads' ships are out there. The ships themselves are not that big of an idea. It's that thing in the center, the little patent model that we have, the gun carriages are really the big story on the boats. And we have the patent models in our collection at the History Museum. I don't get to play with them, but I want to. I would like to get them out and see what they do. So a little bit about the bridge. So this is bridge moment. So the Civil War has happened. He's had this success with the bridges, or with the boats, and all of this at the same time in St. Louis, this bridge question is coming up. Bridges in St. Louis had been brought up since the 1830s. It was pretty clear that eventually someone was going to have to figure this out. It had become a legal question, whether it was even legal to make a bridge and impede steamboats, and it was a big deal, and it all wraps up in politics and finances. Chicago starts to gain momentum as a city, makes it even clearer that St. Louis has to have a bridge. Again, Eads is not involved in any of this early stuff. The first Mississippi bridge is built at Rock Island in Illinois. It does not stand very long before a boat accidentally hits it, and then it's rebuilt pretty quickly. But in the meanwhile, there's a lot brewing when it comes to boats. Here in St. Louis, the big challenge that is against the bridge, and again, Eads is not part of this yet, is the ferry companies hold a pretty tight hold on that industry. They're making tons of money. They own the rail yards, and they own the way you're going to get your stuff across the river. So if they don't want a bridge, that's not in their interest. So Eads then finally gets brought into it, and he is once he's in, he's fully in, and he's designing quickly. The National Committee of Engineers holds a national conference here. He presents his design, and they promptly say, no, but that is totally impossible what you are suggesting, which is totally wrong. He was right. Just real quick, this is a ferry boat and a receipt from Wiggins Ferry Company. We'll say that Wiggins is the bad guy in the bridge story to begin with. Here's an image of some of the land holdings that Wiggins have. So they own so much of the land around the river, have a really tight hold. So here's an image. That top one there is one of the competing bridge ideas, not Eads's. And the person that designed this, I can imagine he looked at this and maybe laughed under his breath, because if you look on that second image there, that is obviously drawn by someone. This bridge is designed by someone who has not walked the bottom of the Mississippi River here at St. Louis. I have not either, so I'm talking as if I know something, but I have not walked it. This person didn't either. Because what Eads knows, and this is his drawing up next, so pay attention to the base, under the water, not the bridge itself, underneath. So this is what Eads knows, which is on the St. Louis side, on the Missouri side, it's a limestone bluff. It's not going to be hard to get down to bedrock, and you have to get to bedrock if it's going to stand. But he knows that on the Illinois side, you've got to go, or you have to, who knows where it is. So you've got to go all the way down to bedrock through this mud and sand. You have to have two different engineering approaches to the different ends of the bridge. And so this is going to be one of the big challenges his bridge is overcoming, is this depth and having to get down to bedrock. And so he's going to overcome that with the caissons. So there's this huge political drama. He's in head of all of it. Project gets going. He's quickly named engineer-in-chief, not because a room full of people look around and say, hey, that's the best engineer. He's the best guy for so many reasons. He's connected. He's a creative finance person. He is well respected. He knows the river. He's all these things. Originally, the company is the Illinois and St. Louis Bridge Company. Quickly, they realized they have to be the Bridge and Tunnel Company. And so they're not only is he building the bridge, but has to figure out how to build a tunnel underneath the city of St. Louis, which was not part of the original plan at all. Here's a big idea. Here's a big, massive idea. This is the caisson for the eastern pier, so the Illinois side. This is one of the most popular images you will see if you're talking about the Eads Bridge or watching a documentary about it, reading an article, they're going to plop this thing in there. And it was really important to me when we did the exhibit that we blow this up as big as possible so that you could see the guys at the bottom working at the very bottom of this thing and understand that those are how this thing is working. And so it's basically an iron. He had gone to Europe, he had seen a caisson, but he has to do it on a scale that had not been attempted. And so basically he needs an iron bowl that he can flip over and sink to the bottom of the river while stacking stones on top of it with men working in the iron bowl to shovel the sand out with pressure and then have pressurized air. So you may know, I'll just kind of do a little pop quiz. Does anyone know where he gets his iron bowl, gets the iron for these caissons? The Step Brothers would have been a provider here in St. Louis. He also he knows one of his gunboats, the Milwaukee, has sunk and is being salvaged, goes and gets it and brings it back here. So the caisson is actually built with parts of the gunboat, one of the gunboats, which is pretty cool. So they have this structure there. It's getting taller and taller. They're getting closer and closer to the bottom. They have to go almost 100 feet down under the top of the Mississippi River to get to bedrock. Once they get close, past 45 to 50 feet, people start hurting. People start complaining of aches and pains. Nobody knows what's going on. I mean, Eads has done this for a long time. He knows it hurts and it takes a toll on his body, doesn't know why. Once they get down to 100 feet, though, people start to not just die, people start to die a terrible death. It is a very painful and very awful thing that they go through. He calls his doctor. The doctor shows up to figure out what's going on, cannot figure out what's going on. They try all kinds of different things. And so the doctor actually subjects himself to it to figure out what is going on. He's paralyzed for 2 weeks, can't move, has to crawl up the stairs to get out of the caisson. So they don't fully figure out what's going on by the time they're done, but what they did find out will lead later to finding out what the bends are, or caisson's disease. This is where it first shows up. So for the building of the Brooklyn Bridge, it's really important. So this is another big idea, these caissons, because it's not, there's a lot of technology that went into this that he designed. So the bridge opens, 1874. It's done. He gets this thing going. Tunnel is not complete when they open it, but it gets open, and it's a really big deal. He is a showman, Mr. Eads. So he has this is not a photo of the elephant, but he's not just a good engineer and a good money person, he's also a big showman. And so because people are so skeptical that his bridge is going to stand, he goes and gets an elephant from the circus and has an elephant walk across the bridge before it opens to convince the lay people that it's going to stand, you don't have to worry about this. And so a few days after the elephant, they drive a line of 14 locomotives across the bridge, headed up by William Tecumseh Sherman. 300,000 people come to watch the bridge open from around the country. His mind is already somewhere else. He's the hero that day, and he's like, this is exciting. He has some really good quotes about this day. But his mind in 1875, he's going to be doing things within a short amount of time, 1,000 miles away. His next big idea, and usually not a lot of people, we usually stop with him with the bridge, but after the bridge, he's already down in New Orleans thinking about the fact that as the Mississippi River, dumps out into the port of New Orleans, it dumps out all that silt and it just blocks it up, and it's really shallow and it's kind of a backwater situation. You can't do anything much with it. So he's looking at that, and there's another guy looking at that that he has clashed with before. If anyone's read the book Rising Tide, Andrew Humphreys is like Eads' arch nemesis, and it's this really great story. But they're working against each other down here with ideas, pitching ideas on what to do with the port of New Orleans Eads' idea is jetties. And so there's a picture there of the jetties, which are basically huge wood pilings with smaller wood like woven in with it that makes makes a structure that will then cause the sand to divert itself and then deepen. It will then scoop out and deepen the port. He goes to Washington, D.C. He has friends in high places that are connected to why you guys are here today. And this is something that gets pushed forward. His idea wins. And when it wins, it very quickly takes New Orleans from nothing as far as a port to one of the largest ports in the country. And it just like tenfold times the business that can start coming now up the Mississippi River. He's still not done. This is not big enough yet. This is a satellite image of Port Eads. The jetties working away. They're still there, in there. So by the 1880s, he has built these boats. He's made a fortune. He's spanned the river at St. Louis. He's opened up New Orleans to river traffic 1,000-fold. Still not enough. So his next big idea was to create a ship railway that would allow boats to be picked up out of the ocean, taken across land, and then dropped back into the other side. So this is an idea that would have been revolutionary in terms of shipping times. The Panama Canal was several decades away, and the spot that he was proposing was on the southern tip of Mexico. So the opposite of a bridge, right? We're going to do the opposite thing here. But he has a much tougher time convincing the government because of political reasons and other things. So he goes to the Mexican government directly for support. They give him a thumbs up. He goes to the Congress in the United States. He offers to pay for the whole thing himself. And if it works, they can pay him back. They kind of table it. It is approved in one house, but not in the, and it gets tabled. And they start clearing the land, thinking it's going to get passed, but Congress never votes on it. So it never comes to fruition. And he passes away while on a trip in the Bahamas. And so it never comes. He dies in 1887. So a few things about him. In 1884, he's awarded, before he dies, he's awarded the Albert Medal by the British Royal Society, first American to ever win that award for the art of engineering, first American. He is, in 1932, the American Colleges of Engineering name him as one of the 5 greatest engineers of all time, alongside Da Vinci and Edison. We've got a poem there on the right that was written about when he died, the lines on the life and death of Captain James Buchanan Eads. There's the cenotaph from Bellefontaine, where the Eads family is buried underneath that, underground, in a very large mausoleum. And before I wrap up, I have a few just kind of fun things that we have in our collection. There's some of my favorite things I found in looking through the Eads collection here. First thing is the cover of a James Buchanan Eads cigarette pack. The inside includes a tiny typed story of his life. Here is his pass from during the Civil War. Passport saying he can go in and out of St. Louis at all times in all directions. We have an invitation. This is from the Albert Medal. This is like the list of all the famous people that were there. We have an invitation to a banquet that the city throws on his behalf in the 1870s with food, entertainment, talks. Everybody comes to talk about Eads. Must have been a really cool night to experience. Then we have a medal that he was given depicting Poseidon taming the river. And then I'll wrap up with 2 kind of silly but fun ones. We have a lot of his correspondence and letters. One that I found that I felt very connected to was a letter where a friend of him is thanking him for a gift of Missouri wine. The writer admits in the letter that he and his wife were skeptical that Missouri had good wine, but were pleasantly surprised to find that it did. Just found that very, well, I feel like being, when I explain to people not from here that we do have wine, they're like, I don't know. But it's kind of fun that he had to deal with that too. And the last image is the exact spot in New York City where his house, so he and his wife, his second wife, they moved to New York eventually, and they would have been there the same time that the Grants were in New York as well. And this is where their house stood. And in a fun, just twist of fate, this is now the gift shop for the Museum of Modern Art. Which is fun because the Eads Bridge is considered the very first piece of modern architecture. So that was my whirlwind talk about my favorite guy and one of my favorite topics. And so Mark, do you want to talk before we do Q&A, or do we want to do? Okay. Oh, thank you.
think that Amanda's probably going to be able to help me out on this story, but my understanding is that as they were building the bridge, there was great angst amongst the ship owners, and they were very concerned about their ability to clear it. And I'm glad you brought that. I didn't know that about Rock Island, where there was a ship that took itself out and the bridge. And so there's all this argument happening as to whether or not ships are going to be able to get under there. And Eads was like, yes, it's going to be fine. But eventually the Corps of Engineers gets convinced by the ship owners that this is not okay and that there are going to be problems. So they propose building a canal around the bridge that would go, which, yes, yes, it's almost humorous, but this did get bought into. So because the Corps of Engineers had bought into it, it makes its way all the way to Grant's office. And Grant's the one who has to step in and say, no, you're not going to build a canal around the bridge. Now, I don't know what part of that I screwed up, if anything, but so that was one thing that when I read that story this winter, I was like, all right, this is a great Eads and Grant connection. And of course, the riverboats coming out of Carondelet. But that's all. And oh, Greg wanted me to tell you all that that Grant and Foote on January 14th, 1862, were the first naval. How does he say it? Yeah, Eads writes a letter testifying that this was the first engagement of an ironclad vessel in the world. And Grant and Foote were on that ship that was built by Eads. That's all I got. And there you go.
There's an interesting thing that Grant has a different connection to the Eads Bridge that doesn't get talked about much, and that's his connection to Dr. William Taussig. So William Taussig was, I'm going to say, a right-hand man to Eads. He's the guy that's in the office getting it done. He's an incredible figure, historic figure himself, but he was the first mayor of Carondelet, and while he was mayor of Carondelet, he actually denied Grant a job working for the city of Carondelet because Taussig was an abolitionist and connecting to the Dent family and the enslaved people they had. He denied Grant that job, denied him a job, and then later they're going to reconnect later because of the bridge and all of these different connections. And he says, "You're forgiven. It's all good. It works out." But yeah, there's an interesting connection there to the bridge and Carondelet as well. So there's technically, there was a shipyard until the early 2000s, and then in a very strange twist of fate, the shipyard by that time had passed through several different companies' hands. It was St. Louis Shipyard by then, St. Louis Barge Company, and it was in the holdings of the Enron Corporation. So when that collapses, they lose ownership of the shipyard, and it's no longer a shipyard at that point. It's a very strange twist. So it sat vacant for a long time. If you go to that site, it's on Marconi. So if you go to the foot of Marconi in Carondelet, there are still some buildings there that allude to there having been a shipyard there, and now there's other structures and other factories in that site. But physically it's still there, but it's not as clearly as it used to be. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, and he has a great quote in his, legal, I don't know if it's like a closing argument or part of the legal writings for that, where he says presciently, no man has any more right to go north and south and east and west. And he kind of sums it up that way. That's a tall question to unpack that, and I don't know if I can do it any kind of eloquent way other than just history is full of history, and non-history is full of those types of personalities and people that just can't stop. In his case, we're lucky it was big, right? It was in the best for everyone type of thing, and he had the interests of the river and the city and people that needed it at heart there. Thank you so much.